Okay, let's talk about Haikyuu, and now this is chapter 172. I do have, I think, just enough to say about this chapter that it'll warrant its own chapter review. Um, so, after going up by 2 points, Shirato Rizawa takes a timeout. Of course, it's definitely a good choice. I mean, they're losing momentum. They need a timeout to break the other team's momentum. Totally acceptable. So, again, that was definitely a good time to take the timeout, and just good on the author for putting it in, I guess. Because you would think, like, at this point, if they didn't use a timeout and Karasuno won, then people would start complaining, like, why didn't they use a timeout there? They haven't used it yet, etc. Um, and then here comes the interesting point of there is no such thing as a perfect defense, and that is absolutely true. Uh, of course, that is Ushijima's quote, where during the timeout they're talking about like how their physiques should give them more explosive power and certainly should get through that defense, even though they've improved in the middle of the match. Because, which is also realistic, because if you think about it, if you're studying your opponent, you can certainly uh, change your momentum and or play style to best counteract them if you know how to do it. And that's what Karasuno has been doing. They've been really, in a long set, they've been adjusting to Shiratorizawa and vice versa, as you can see in this chapter. Of course, Yamaguchi with another serve, but it was short. But they still managed to save it and was able to get the kill. Again, Ushijima, because or Ushikawa, whichever you go by, because he's just so good. And of course, they do note that Ushikawa could reach his limit soon, because this is a long set. Uh, though to be fair, on Karasuno's side, it seems like Kageyama is also losing steam as well. He might lose it first because he's constantly giving it his all in order to accurately get a good set. As we saw, he actually fucked up against Tsukishima, or not against Tsukishima, but in that set with Tsukishima, where it went over, and luckily he was able to save it, and it actually resulted in a point because it was a unorthodox hit. So, good on him, but at the same time, that was all Kageyama's fault. Where if he had missed that, that would not have been on Tsukishima, that would have been on Kageyama. Um, but, uh, you know, Shiratorizawa coming back, another kill from Ushijima, and then yet another one. Uh, so even Asahi gets a one touch. Uh, when he spiked, it was a one touch, so they were able to counteract it and save it. And again, Ushikawa or Ushijima, well, he didn't spike it, but he did I don't know, I forget what they call it, but it was a trick, and he just kind of lobbed it right over their hands, which is smart because since they shifted their defense, the there's always a point, like no matter what type of defense you play in volleyball, basketball, any sport that involves offense and defense, if you compensate in one area, you're sacrificing another. Um, and even if you try to play a balanced defense, you're sacrificing in the point where no single spot in your defense is going to be solid. Uh, it'll just be a one-man show in each particular spot, making it inherently weaker than if you try to compensate, like say in the front, but then your back is sort of opened up, and if your back is shifted, now your front is open. So there is no perfect defense, as we said in the beginning of the chapter, and as I said in the beginning of the review. And that's part of what they meant, was no matter what type of defense you play, it's not going to be perfect because you're always going to have a weakness. whether it's you don't have enough people in a certain spot or whether you have too many people in one spot and none in another. There is no perfect defense, and Ushijima is able to take advantage of that at the end of the chapter with a sort of like a light touch over them, making the front of their court where they're not trying to block. Certainly, nobody's there because they're trying to block, and everybody in the back is in the back, and they can't get there in time. So ultimately, I guess at the end, we kind of talk about um, giving up and getting exhausted, but Kageyama still has just a ridiculous fighting spirit, as we've seen from Jump Street, from Chapter 1, or Episode 1, whichever you prefer. Um, of course, like, why is everybody on this team of monster? Not that Shiratorizawa Torizawa is any different, but it's a team of monsters against a team of monsters, basically. So, with all that being said, it's 24-24, and we're in the fourth set, and it's Shiratorizawa's serve, which means that Karasuno still has a slight advantage in this set, and I still obviously think that they're going to win this set because I believe it'll go to 5. So, yeah, that's going to be about it. This was a very good chapter in terms of realism and just overall story and just game development. It really worked and really proved a point that's realistic in both the show and manga's mechanics and in real life, because Haikyuu is very realistic compared to the other sports manga. Like Slam Dunk was more realistic than Kuroko no Basket, but still not that realistic at all. But neither of those are, and Prince of Tennis is not that realistic either. If I'm being honest, I didn't watch that much of it. I kind of dropped it. But Haikyuu, man, it's very realistic. It's really good. So that's it. Thank you guys for listening. See you guys next week.